everybody, it's Dean Z speaking to you once again from room 250 in Hutchins Hall. I want to talk to you today about something I get asked a lot about at this time of year, which is, what the hell are you people doing with my application? We generally say that if once you submit, you should get an answer from us in about 10 weeks. But then we also say that doesn't hold true if you apply at the very beginning of the season. So right now, if you apply at the very beginning of the season, it's about to be about 10 weeks. And so I think people are like, so I want to explain what happens in our office beginning back in September and what you can expect. Now, this is going to be pretty specific to the University of Michigan, but especially for peer schools, I think the processes will be different in lots of detailed ways, but I think on the whole, it's pretty good guidance for other schools as well. So, all right, so our application opens in early September and people start submitting. I have two people who work in the admissions office who read applications before they get to me. They start working, doing their reading right away as soon as applications start coming in. They read about 150 applications each per week. So depending on what the volume is in a given week, they might both read an application. If it's a high volume week, then only one of them will read an application, and they will make notes and they will put those aside for me when I start reading. But in September and through mid-November or even late November, I am traveling almost every week for significant chunks of time. So my ability to read applications is very limited. I started towards the very end of October, and to be very honest, I am behind. There is a pile of application notes waiting for me at my home right now that I could be reading, except that Dustin says I have to do a video every 13 seconds. I'm not kidding. That's what he told me. I am kidding. But still, he's a harsh taskmaster. Anyway, I digress. So that's one of the holdups, is that I travel and I cannot stay on top of reading all the files as much as one might want. Other holdups, in weeks where we get lots of applications, which just happened to us last week because there was an LSAT score release, and so a lot of people applied. We have to do something to those applications before we can send them to the reader. We have to process them in various ways. And that goes pretty quickly on our end, but in a very high volume week, sometimes we can't quite keep up. And so we got a little behind with the processing. And then in addition, sometimes readers get sick and so on and so forth. So sometimes the first readers get a little behind too. But let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that everything is going as it should be. And by the time we get to December, usually it is. Like, all the first readers are, both of the first readers are doing, keeping up with their assignments. I am able to catch up and keep up with my assignments, and the people who process the applications are able to keep up with theirs. But sometimes there's some confusion about, like, well, if I applied in September and I am seeing on Reddit that someone who applied in October found out they were admitted, what is going on? Well, there's 3 possible final decisions that I might make when I read an application, and then there's 2 non-final decisions I might make. And here I am talking, I'm just talking about regular decision applications. Early decision applications are a little different, but I'm just gonna put those to the side because I can guarantee that all the early decision people will learn something from us by mid-December. So I'm really talking to the regular decision people at this point. The non-final decisions I might make are that I need additional information from an applicant. That comes up when I'm reading a file and I think, I really like this person, but there's something that I don't understand. They haven't told us what they're doing right now. They're not in school, and their resume reflects that they are not employed. So what are they doing? Or there's some misconduct and they gave me an explanation, but it wasn't enough detail and I don't really understand what happened. Or there are gaps in employment, and I'd like to know about that, or there was time off from work. So all kinds of things where I might think, I'm really liking this applicant, but I need a little more information. So that's one status where you're not going to get a decision right away. You'll hear from someone in my office with more information, and then it will eventually come back to me, but that slows things down. So that's a fairly small number of people. That's maybe 10 a week. Oh, and the other category is people who are still in school who I want to see what their first semester grades are like. And that's a not insignificant number of people where I feel like I just need to see a little bit more in terms of coursework. That you won't hear from us about that. You're just supposed to know to submit your grades after your first semester. Okay. Then the other category are people where I'm not looking for additional information, but for one reason or another, I can't quite make up my mind. And that is because at this time of year, this is being recorded in November, I'm not quite sure what this year is going to look like yet. So I'm basing my decisions on what happened last year. In this case, last year was a pretty competitive year. So I'm thinking, I know how I made decisions and who I was admitting and not able to have room for and so forth. And so I'm sort of applying that rubric mentally when I'm reading. So there might be people who I really like, but I think, I don't think I would have had room for them last year. Maybe I will this year, because I don't know what the whole season is going to look like. And I don't really know that until after the first of the year. That's when I have enough data, enough applications in that I can get a sense of how many people are going to apply overall. So there are lots of people where I think, I'm just going to put them aside and see what happens. And if I'm able to admit them, great. So those are two non-final decisions that I might make. Most people, though, I read the file and I'm able to make a decision. Those three decisions are admit, waitlist, deny. Let's start with waitlist and denies. So when I decide that someone is going to get denied, I don't just send them an email right away. We pile them all together and send them out sometime in January. Why January? Why not do it now? Well, there's three different reasons. One is sentimental, one is historical, and one is quite practical. The sentimental reason is, and this is how it was explained to me when I first got this job 800,000 years ago, we don't like to ruin people's holidays. So wait till after New Year's to send out the bad news. Okay, I don't know. I could go either way on that. Like, I get that. But maybe people would say, I'd rather know in December, thanks very much. But still, that is a reason. Second reason is more historical and doesn't completely pertain anymore, and that was in the olden days, the LSAT was only administered 4 times a year, and lots of people took it in December. So I didn't like to send out denies until after we had seen December scores in January, because maybe a given score would come in and it would change my mind. So that's historical. Now that is not the case. Like now there's a January LSAT that lots of people take. If we know you're going to take it, and I was otherwise thinking about denying you, but I thought I think a new score might make a difference, we pull you out and set you aside. But otherwise, that doesn't really pertain anymore, bottom line, but it's sort of a historical artifact. The third reason is very practical. As I just said, you can't really know what an applicant pool is going to look like until after about the first of the year, where we have enough volume in to really see what's going to happen. So there might be people who I thought I wanted to waitlist or deny, who I'm going to change my mind about, right? If it turns out that this pool, like I read it in October, and I'm thinking of the prior year's very competitive cycle, and then maybe January comes and I realize it's not going to be that competitive, I might end up changing some decisions at the margin. So it's just a prudential consideration from my point of view. And that same thing pertains to the waitlist, but even more so, because those are people, everybody we waitlist is someone who at some level we would have been happy to admit we really thought they had something going for them, that we would have liked to see in our class. I should say here, that makes it sound like I don't think people who get denied have something going for them. They do. But again, there's just limitations on how many people we can admit. So please do not take that to mean I thought you didn't have anything going for you when I denied you, because that's almost never the case. But many hard decisions have to be made. But with wait lists, it's you're even closer to having gotten admitted, and so I put that off even longer. So I usually wait till February to send out the first rounds of waitlist decisions. Okay, so then that leaves the admits. What happens with those? As it happens, I hand sign all offer letters, and I write a note on them, and I do various other things that are sort of time consuming. So I can only do about 40 offers in a week at the most, somewhere between 30 and 40 offers. So when I read in a given week, I write down everybody that I want to admit, and they get put in this pool of people who are presumptively going to get admitted. But I can only pick 40 of them a week, and maybe I put 60 on that list. Now, it all ends up kind of working out over the course of the season, because as we go through the season, usually, don't ask me why, but applications tend to get weaker at the later we go. So the applications that come in February, historically, maybe 20% of the people who apply earlier in the season are people that look like people we might want to admit, and maybe in February it's 10%. I am making up those numbers, but you get my point. So as I say, it tends to work out over the course of the season, but I might take only 30 or 40 when in a given week I had designated more. So that also slows things down. I think that covers everything that I want to tell you about what happens in the course of the season, and why things get a little slow, and why you might have submitted early on and not yet have heard. It's a rolling process, which means that we do reads in the order in which they are submitted. But the decisions don't necessarily come out in that same order. I hope that is useful information and not anxiety-producing information. I hope it is a little bit of a window into what we are doing on our end. And that is really all I have to say about that. So, all right. Thank you, as always, for listening, and thank you for Dustin for finding us a room 250 again to record in. And wherever you go, go blue.